As our members know, we've been working through a process here the last month or two to identify and appoint elders and deacons for our church. This process is coming to a conclusion today, and together we've identified 4 men to join with those who are already leading our church as elders and deacons. We'll have more to say on that at the end of our service, and I hope, it is my intention, to make this a brief lesson so that we have some time to handle that then. But I want to spend here just a few brief moments thinking with you about where we go from here. Our leadership has, ever since I've been here, placed an emphasis on making sure that we look like the New Testament church, that we are led by shepherds, that we are served by deacons, that we are comprised of saints. That's the description in Philippians 1 verse 1. And the church here and the leaders here have always made that a point of emphasis, that we need to be a church that looks like the church we see in the New Testament. So, what do we do now that we've gone through this process yet again? What do we do now that we've appointed more elders and deacons, that we've identified these men? What should our next steps be? I just have 2 quick observations, 2 challenges for us to think about as we try to move forward now with some of the decisions that we've made here in the last month or so. I want to suggest first that once we appoint elders and deacons in a church, and we've had them for some time, but now we're adding these men to that number. Once we do that, once we accomplish that, it's time to get to work. Appointing elders and deacons does not mean that we have everything sorted out and taken care of now. This is not the pinnacle where now we can sit back and relax because we've done the job that we were supposed to do. We got these guys to be elders and deacons. We don't get to kick back now and enjoy the smooth ride of being in a church with elders and deacons. That's simply not the way it has ever worked, and it's not the way it's going to work now. Appointing elders and deacons does not mean that we've selected people to handle all of the church's work. This doesn't mean that we have now found the people who are going to be the go-getters in the church and they can now do all of the work that's at hand. We don't get to sit back and watch our elders and deacons do all of the work that needs to happen in the church. That's not why we've selected them, and we shouldn't assume that that's going to happen. Our work isn't done now. Our work is just beginning now. Elders, old and new alike, need to recommit themselves today to doing the hard work of shepherding this group of believers. That's your job, elders. We read from 1 Peter chapter 5 at the beginning of our worship service, and in 1 Peter chapter 5 verses 1 through 4, there are several descriptions of what the work of an elder is. 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter says, I exhort the elders among you as your fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, and a partaker also of the glory that is to be revealed. I exhort you to shepherd the flock of God among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but voluntarily, according to the will of God, and not for sordid gain, but with eagerness, not yet as lording it over those allotted to your charge, but proving to be examples to the flock. That's a great summary of what these men should be doing in our church, the work that they are being called and asked to do. First, they're called to shepherd the flock. Now, some translations will say to feed the flock. That is, to teach them spiritually what they need to know. This is a spiritual kind of analogy. They're told to oversee the flock, to be aware of the goings-on in the church, to be watchful for danger, to be involved in what's happening in the lives of the saints here. And they're told to guide the flock, not as lords, not pushing and prodding in the direction that you want us to go, but to guide as examples who invite people to follow you toward Jesus. Our shepherds are taking on the responsibility to provide us spiritual direction. Appointing elders is worthless if the men we appoint don't do the work that we're appointing them to do? We might as well not have them if they're not going to do this spiritual task. And so it's important now that we are appointing elders and deacons, that we recognize there is work to be done on the part of our elders, but also on the part of our deacons. Deacons, old and new alike, need to do the hard work of leading the church toward service. We preached several weeks back now from Acts chapter 6, where we found a model of the kind of work we expect deacons to be doing. And Acts chapter 6 points out how our deacons should be men who take charge of the physical things that need to be done in the church to free the shepherds to do their spiritual work. I cannot stress this enough, and if I sound like a broken record, I'm sorry. Deacons are not merely the gophers for the elders. They are not merely the handymen for the church. We've appointed deacons not to do menial tasks, but to be leaders over certain tasks and to see that they get done efficiently and biblically. Appointing deacons is worthless if the men we appoint do not do the work that we're inviting them to do. But elders and deacons shouldn't be the only workers in our church, far from it. For this church to truly honor and glorify God, for it to truly look like the church in the New Testament, every single one of us has work to get done. There are all kinds of instructions given throughout the Bible, things for the whole church to be doing, things for all of us to be working on. To love one another, to encourage one another, to be together. All of these kinds of things that we're all expected to do. The instructions given in the Bible are not just for elders and deacons, they're for Christians, they're for disciples who want to look like Jesus. Having elders and deacons doesn't give you or me a pass. We didn't appoint these men to do the work for us. We appointed these men to lead and guide our work. To lead and guide our work. One of the most tragic things that I have seen in churches is when elders end up doing the work of deacons. When elders care more for financial management and building maintenance than for the souls that they have been charged to oversee. When deacons do the work that members should be doing, those physical day-to-day tasks that have to be done in the service to the church. And then members have no job left to do other than to sit on the pews as passive observers, watching as the elders and deacons do all the work in the church. That's not the way it's supposed to be. It does us no good to appoint elders and deacons if we're not going to follow their lead. If we're not going to work alongside them, we might as well not appoint them at all. We're appointing these men because they have strong character, because they have exhibited qualities that the Bible directs us to look for. We are appointing these men because we believe that they are capable of leading us in the direction that we should go. The question is, are we going to get to work and follow them? But I want to make one other observation as far as where I think we ought to go from here. We obviously need to get to work. We need to take this as a time to refresh ourselves. Deacons is enough. But I would caution us as a church never to become complacent in this area. I don't know that the Bible ever tells us that we can have enough spiritual leadership. I'm not sure of a verse that tells us that you can have enough biblical guidance, sound, wise leaders. Even after this appointment process is over, even after we add these men to the number of elders and deacons that we already have, I want to challenge each and every one of you to be constantly on the lookout for more elders and deacons. When Timothy was told to look for elders and deacons in 1 Timothy chapter 3, Paul prefaced the whole conversation with these words: if any man aspires to the office of overseer, and likewise deacons, if any man aspires to that role of deacon. I think the implication there is that any qualified man should serve. When any man has demonstrated the proper character, we need to identify him and consider him for the role of service that he's prepared himself for. And by the way, if I can just say, we don't need to wait for the elders to ask us to start looking. We don't have to wait. You can start that right now by looking around this room and saying, who is next? Who is preparing their lives to serve the church in this way? Who is building their family in such a way that they will be ready to care for the church of the Lord? Don't wait for the elders to say it's time to look. Start looking today for who might be elders and deacons in the future. And to that point, right now, you need to be encouraging the men around you to desire this work. And you need to be encouraging them to work towards these goals. And right now, our young men need to be preparing themselves to one day serve the church in these much needed roles. It's a special thing to appoint elders and deacons. There are a lot of churches in our country, around the world, that do not have the luxury of spiritual leadership that we have here. We are blessed. It is a special thing to get to add men to a group of already great leaders that we have. We're blessed by God to have found capable, qualified, and willing men. But now it's time to get to work. And now is the time to be looking for more. That's our goal here, is always to follow the Bible's pattern for everything. That includes our church leadership, but similarly, we want to encourage you to follow the teaching of Jesus in your life. So we're going to pause in our worship right now, as we always do. And we're going to sing a song together. We're all going to stand. And if you recognize that you have not been following the pattern of Jesus in your life, if you've not been living like the risen Lord, then we would love to have an opportunity to encourage you, to help you, to study with you. If you've never come to faith in Jesus, if you've never come to obey Him, to submit your life to Him through the waters of baptism, we want to help you with that. And if there's some way that we can do that, now's a great time for you to let us know as we stand and sing this song together.